this is fun. I'm almost done now. I've got these two going on. They're very similar. So I'm just gonna finish up. So what I'm doing is I'm just painting, oops, that's not supposed to be there. I'm just painting my triangles with water. And then I'm adding my mix of cerulean blue and viridian green, which are, I think basically they're my favorite colors because well, on this palette anyway, very small palette that I've purchased. I use them so much more than every other color. So I'm just gonna finish this up. And what I'm doing is I'm just painting them with water, and I'm allowing the water to create the design. I like that. I personally like the irregularity of it. I feel like it gives it some beautiful imperfection. And that's something that I'm a big fan of. So I understand if you want to work in a more controlled way and have it all be the same, you might want to consider using gouache for that. A little bit, it's a thicker paint, and you can have more control on the way that your paint is interacting with the paper. But I'm a fan of gouache too. I'm a fan of every type of art form, but just for this, I feel like the watercolor brings like a special kind of flow to it. Okay. So for my last section, I just want to connect these two colors. So I'm gonna go back in with my viridian and cerulean painting areas. Cool. I like it. I'm gonna just finish up the edges there. Cool. Pretty good. I think I could do another layer around. Such a tiny section. I'm just gonna paint it in. Hey cat, I'm coming. Well, I have time today because my husband's out with my kids, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and add another layer. I'm gonna go ahead and add another layer. I'm gonna try to use my gold paint that I've purchased but not really used, like, or even this blue. Actually, that blue would look really cool. So add some shine to it. Making it really thick. That's how I like it. Super thick. All right, let's start adding some details. I'm gonna go in. I think this could look cool, actually. I'm gonna put in a dot. In the center of my white triangle. I mean, you probably should erase your lines. I started this as an analysis drawing, so I was trying to make the lines really obvious. Okay, I really like this. I'm gonna keep going with this. It's really cool. It's kind of reminds me of a pine cone, actually. I'm enjoying this. Fun. Fun. Okay, I think I'm gonna add more here. One. I think that's pretty. Let's have a look here. Okay, my last, to make this pattern similar to the Roman Mosaic that we analyzed, just to get back into that, I'm gonna erase the middle once it's dry, and then I'm gonna draw a motif in the middle. Just go really slow and careful. I don't want to mess up my painting. I'm just gonna shake it. There we go. Oh, cool! I picked it up, and it's actually, we got the dots are actually shining, which is kind of fun. Okay, so back to what the mosaic had was a flower of life pattern. I'm gonna create it from the inside. From the inside circle. And then it also had, oops, I forgot this one. It also had like some little, just gonna check. But yeah, I had these little kind of semicircles all the way around. I just have to find like the right place to do that. I feel like it's really, it would have been here actually. Is that possible? Yep. Oh, I found the point. Cool. Here. Funky. Like it. There. I think the people of the past were so genius, like the things that people came up with very limited means. And I feel like now in a society where like we're just growing and moving so fast, but we don't have like basic confidence to do things sometimes. Just relying on apps and things. I think it's important to kind of go back to basics, you know? Okay. Oh. Let's see. Okay, so my design, this design also has like a circle in the middle. All right, I'm gonna go all out, create a little circle. I'm not really gonna worry too much about the size. I'm just gonna reduce it until I see a place where it can go. There we go. All right, let's get started. And I'm gonna use all shimmer for this because I think it'll look really special. Is that how they did it? Oh dang, okay. They actually had it white in the middle, white on the sides. And they just had this part dark, but oh well, I've already started, so I'll find a solution to make the center contrast. I like this, even though I inverse the colors, I'm happy with it. So this is the first stage of my very shiny painting. I'm gonna go ahead with some more Viridian and Cerulean to to darken that line around. I feel like it can be a little bit darker. It's kind of funny because I ended up dipping my hand and in the paint and actually putting some smudges, but it's gonna give me the push that I needed because I actually really was thinking of painting the background around here. So now I kind of have to. Well, I could also just sponge off that color, but I just really want to paint the background to see what happens. So what I'm gonna do is, like, my first step before I paint anything large with a large brush, I'm just gonna tape it down. I'm gonna tape down my paper so it doesn't curl up so much when I'm painting. There are much better tapes to use, but I'm just using packing tape. I hope it holds. That's just what I have on hand. Double-sided tape would be the ideal. Or there's also really great watercolor tape that you can get. That just requires a little more prep. So anyway, I'm gonna take my paintbrush, I'm gonna dip it into my medley of colors here. And this is the fun part, using a big brush. And we can really appreciate how the watercolor works when we use a big brush. There's a lot of interesting things that are going to happen, I'm sure, especially because the brush, the paint seems to be reacting to the marker. I like it. Ooh. Actually, my first ever painting class in college, I was 16, and we had a painting class, and the minimum paintbrush size that we were allowed to use was 1 inch. It was so cool. We had to do all kinds of like still life and model painting and all sorts of abstract, and our canvases were almost like as big as we were. We learned how to make our own canvases. It was really fun. Painting large is actually one of my favorite things with big brushes, and it's something I'd like to get back to when I have a little bit more studio space. Inshallah. Cool, I like it. I'm gonna layer on a bit more paint. Awesome. So really, really good exercise. If you have like a lot going on in your life, just doing a painting like this can be so good for just like processing. Everything moves at such a speed these days, and it can be really overwhelming. And sometimes we don't even have time to just like sit and think about how we feel. And this has been like hugely beneficial to me in my journey. I like that. So, getting close to being done. Very cool. I just want to like clean up that edge on the outside. I think that would look really cool. I'm just gonna look at it. Something needs to be done about that edge. Either we gonna, that could be really cool. Yep, I think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna blur out this part here. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna connect. There we go, I like that. Yay. Guys, I'm gonna play some flute to make a relaxing background for the rest of this video.